Welcome back, everybody. I know we're a little bit late here to talk about One Piece Chapter 1156, but, you know, we had a break week, so we thought we would fill the void. I was busy doing the video over on the main channel, but now today I am here with Laz to talk about Chapter 1156, and we had yet another amazing chapter of this Rocks flashback. I am enjoying it, as I would assume you are as well, Laz. So what are your thoughts so far? I haven't had you on the channel here for, I don't know, a month or 2 months?
Yeah, something like that. It's been a while. I think the last time that we had talked, I'm trying to remember what exactly was the last one we did. Was with the mural stuff? It was even a little bit after, I think, I'm remembering.
Yeah,
or actually, no, I had you on my channel before, after we talked about some stuff after with the Rouge and everything. So, yeah, no, it's been the last few chapters in particular, like the recent stuff we've been getting with the flashback and everything. It's been some of the most fun I've had with the series for a long while. Just getting to see, you know, everything that's been happening right now with Loki in his past, and, you know, even extended from like Herald, and now getting into stuff that we're getting right now with Rocks. I feel like it's not going to be stopping anytime soon. Like, Oda looks like he's been really wanting to do this for a long time, and it's just been very exciting stuff. And yeah, man, I'm hoping that doesn't stop anytime soon.
Yeah, man, it's reminded me a lot of, you know, the Roger flashback, which was really the Odin flashback, but it transitioned into the Roger flashback, right? And I remember when I was reading that week to week, it was one of those things where when it started, you're like, all right, is it going to end? Are we getting to the end? Okay, so we got to this point, there can't be much more, and then Oda just kept going and kept going and kept going.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? I think before the stream we said we were going to talk about this towards the end, but let's actually start with this, because I think a lot of people are wondering it. Do you think we're going to get God Valley in this flashback? Do you think we'll actually get all those details, or do you think Oda might kind of glide over it? You know, kind of like he did with Kuma. We might get a little bit of like Rock's perspective of like what he was thinking going into it, but then he'll just pan out to, you know, a shot of the island with a bunch of hockey lightning, and then we'll fast forward to like after the event, you know, and then so we never actually see it. That's kind of what I think, because getting it from Garp's perspective makes the most sense to me, because it would be cool to get the Marines angle of it, like how worried they were about this whole altercation and the Rocks pirates in general. But the vibes are kind of there to get God Valley, I'm not gonna lie. So what are you thinking, Laz? We getting God Valley soon?
I feel like we are going to get it, but I feel like the way it's going to be done is going to be interesting, because, you know, if you go back to what Loki was saying, like, you know, the world government were the alleged killers behind the death of Rocks and what had happened to him. So how does he know that information? Was he told by somebody from Rocks' crew? Would it have been Linlin? Would it have been Kaido possibly? We don't know, but I do think there's a small chance we may get a little subtle thing that's going to be in that flashback, but then switch over to something else instead before we actually get the truth, which I actually think, going by the method you're saying right there with Garp, I think the way that's going to be done is based on what's happening in Mary Joie, because everyone knows right now Mary Joie is up in the Sea of Flames. We don't know exactly if it's, you know, Shanks' crew that's doing this. We don't know if it's somebody else entirely different. I'm now more of the belief after this flashback that it's Blackbeard that's doing that, and I think the most obvious way of actually getting that explained to us is him bringing Garp to where Emu is. Because I just generally think that Blackbeard's going to pull up on Emu the exact same way Xebec did back in the past. And I feel like this has to be some kind of revenge tour. And this is something I wanted to talk about a little bit like later on and stuff, but I'll talk about now since we're at that point. But I do feel like because Oda's been doing things now where he's like had taken from different stories and implement them into different things. So for example, when we got the mural, kind of has like a Lord of the Rings type of vibe to it. I feel like a Song of Ice and Fire might be something that we see here, where Garp ends up revealing the exacts of what happened in God Valley, similar to the Tower of Joy, for those who are aware of that. Back in the time and stuff, you know, the main lead and stuff, Ned Stark, had something that happened basically over that time there. We didn't know the exacts of what happened. There was different like storytellings of what they were trying to do with it, and eventually the truth came out that in a fight that ensued, somebody got backstabbed, one of the more honorable people in a fight, and they ended up carrying around this epithet after where they were just this hero and all that, but in actuality they weren't. I feel like that might be something that might have ended up happening, where something happened in the fight between Rocks, Roger, and Garp that led to Garp doing something that went against everything he believed in because he had no choice. And it's kind of also what makes sense why he had this feeling of, you know, he hates being called the hero of the Marines. And some people would think, like, you know, for him that stands for justice so much, why would he feel that way? But if the truth was to call him that he did something shady, and that's led to him getting that honorable mention as, or I was saying getting his epithet as the hero of the Marines, but imagine if Blackbeard was to learn that and basically reveal that truth through Emu by pulling up the exact same way that Xebec did. I think that would be kind of like a crazy twist, and it would explain a lot of why Roger, or why Garp basically felt the way he does whenever he gets brought up as the hero of the Marines. He hates it. Why he doesn't want to become an admiral, because you feel like the higher you go up in the chain, the more you want to be able to show off justice, and he doesn't want to do any of that. I think that could go down that kind of line.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because we know that Garp hates the Celestial Dragons, right?
Yeah.
So, and we know that he protected them. So we know he kind of went against his own, way of doing things, basically. So now it leads to the question, well, what forced him to do that? Was Rocks enough of a threat that he felt like, well, I gotta protect the government, because if I don't, then Rocks is gonna take over and he's worse, or is it even something deeper than that? Like, who knows? I don't know if I want it, because I feel like if we get God Valley, it's gonna make me think One Piece is ending soon. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's true.
That, like, because especially with all the reveals we've gotten, like, if he actually stacks this many back to back to back, and like you said, if Blackbeard's in the Holy Land and we're at that stage, then it's like, oh, okay, now Oda's really like cascading down to the end of the story right now, Yeah. And he's doing that anyway, but I guess I want to pump the brakes a little bit. I wouldn't mind skipping over God Valley now. Give us 10, 20, 30 chapters to, figure out some emu stuff, get over to the Holy Land, maybe see Blackbeard there. Then maybe we can get into it, something like that. But I do think this flashback will continue until that point, regardless. Like, because we're at 44 years in the past right now. Like 43 and a half, technically, because they said like a few months after they took over Hachinosu. So we're like 43 and a half. So we got like a little over 5 years until God Valley. So I do think we're going to kind of see their evolution until that point. I was kind of hoping we would see them actually take over Hachinosu, like see them beat up on the pirates that were here and find the gold.
Yeah.
But he skipped over that, which I think is that's like a thing that that we probably should have seen. There's probably some important details there, at least with the gold, because we saw there was a mountain of gold here. So
yeah, not to mention the treasure that God Valley. Well, so from what we remember, what Garp had said to Kong is that there was a treasure, a mystical treasure exactly, that was taken by the world governments or the Celestial Dragons that they brought over to God Valley. And we don't know if it's supposed to be that gold. We don't know if it's maybe that Devil Fruit that Rocks is after, because we know he's after the one in Elbaf. And there's another one, which presents a question like which one could he have been after? Because I don't know if he was rocking a Devil Fruit at this point. And I think the most obvious Devil Fruit he could probably have is the Yami Yami Nomi, considering the fact that Teach ends up having it. Why would he want that exactly? Maybe it goes deeper. Maybe his dad actually had it as well. But I also like the idea that if he actually had Buggy's Devil Fruit too at the time, because it would also make sense why it was hard for people to be able to kill him, because he just cannot be cut down whatsoever.
Yeah.
But whether if Oda wants to go down that route, who knows?
Yeah, and Laz, I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you made a perfect segue to the topic that you and I said we were gonna talk about first, which was this Herald's Devil Fruit, or like the Devil Fruits Rocks is after, but where he said that one of them's most likely on Elbaf, and it'll only show its true power if Herald eats it. I think I'm getting some like Awaken Zone vibes from that personally, where it's like you need the right person to like awaken the zone to control it. But like you kind of said, I feel like it's kind of confusing on what the situation is with the fruit. You mentioned the Yami Yami. I feel like the Yami Yami's unlikely just because Whitebeard was so, like, not clued in on the powers of it, right? Like, whenever he was fighting Blackbeard, like, he got his Devil Fruit taken temporarily and was like, what? Like, he was stunned. And it's like, you would have known, right? You would have known even back when Thatch got the fruit, or, like, found it, that was important. And so I feel like that's, like, a little bit of an issue. And kind of the same thing with the Bara Bara. So I feel like these are going to be new fruits, but the question is, what are they? I think that's the really hard thing to answer. In the official, it says that Loki ate the legendary Devil Fruit of Elbaf.
Right.
So if he did eat it, then then that would tell us that maybe Herald ate it, and then once he died, it duplicated or reincarnated, and then so he ate it. But it could also mean that like Rocks did eat it back then, but then he died. And then they got the fruit back, and then Loki ate it. You know what I'm saying? So, so I don't know, man. I feel like this is a really tough mystery, because you also mentioned the treasure of Hachinosu, right? And I feel like there's 3 good candidates for even more than that.
Well, I'm curious to know what they are.
Well, all the gold would be one easy one, right? Because like they just want their money. Because he also took money from the government, right? He attacked the Celestial Tribute ship.
Yeah, that's a good get back.
Yeah, so it could be like we just want our money back. But I don't think it's that. I think it's going to be a Devil Fruit thing. But, like, Kaido's fruit makes a lot of sense, I think. because that was the one that Big Mom went right for at God Valley. And earlier in this chapter, we saw that Hachinosu was actually like a fish, right? The thing back there, and Kaido's fruit's a fish fruit. So I think it was Brandon King in the chats had the idea that could that be a sign that it was holding the fish fruit, and the government came and took it, and that's why Big Mom went right for it, and that's why Kaido really wanted it apparently, which I like that. It's just, and also the government, remember, they duplicated that fruit. They told Vegapunk to, rather, when Vegapunk was working for them. So I feel like Kaido's fruit's up there, but then, kind of like we just said, the Elbaf fruit, if he does get it from Herald, then maybe that's the whole thing. He got it, and the government took it because they're like, oh, dude, we've been looking for this forever. Thanks for getting it away from Elbaf for us. And that could be the story. So I don't know. Where's your head at on exactly what devil fruits Rocks is after? Because even if one is the Elbaf fruit or Kaido's fruit, what's the second one, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with the thing with like the one on Elbaf, because I remember mistaken, we had known it was in a treasure chest at the time when Herald was getting attacked by his own people, and then assumingly it was Loki that went into the room that got it, or somebody had gone inside and found the treasure that was there. So assumingly, I don't think Herald had to have possession of it or had eaten it at the time. It's tough to say that. I think that if Xebec had taken it, Herald would have at least done enough to try and get it back, unless there was something that, the Rocks pirates completely overwhelmed them and they were able to escape. And maybe that also explains how Herald was maybe... Because I've seen people say possibly that Herald might have been there at the God Valley incident, which would kind of also give Loki a bit of credit as for how he was aware of what had happened. Because imagine if Herald had gone to God Valley, how would Loki be able to know something had happened? He'd probably follow along them. And he tried as hard as he could to get on with Rocks and everything. So it would make sense for why he was aware of certain stuff and why he says that the world government were responsible for the death of Rocks. So like you were saying before, like it maybe in the moment, like we're about to get the moment in God Valley, it kind of stops at something, and purposely we're going to get that later on after. But in terms of what the actual treasure is, it's interesting because when I went back and was rereading some of the chapters in Kuma's flashback to the hunting competition, if you look at the amount of boxes there are, I believe there are about like 6 to 8 boxes that were present there. So assumingly, Kaido's fruit, Kuma's fruit is also there as well. But I think the national treasure probably could have been among the other ones. And if I'm not mistaken, Charlotte Lillian, Big Mom had stated to Kaido, there was something that kind of like a... Kaido basically owed her for something that happened right there. And I don't know if it's like in conversation they had talked about the idea of this devil fruit that could turn you into a dragon or whatever. So if Big Mom had found it, then there you go, you have now Kaido for life, basically, for like something that they're gonna owe him for life. So I think it's more akin to that rather than actually that was what Rocks was looking for exactly. And the reason I say the Yami Yami no Mi, because we all know like what it's capable of, what it can do, all these different things, and not to mention the personality that Rocks like has. Like he was somebody that was explained to be like a terrorist, somebody that was doing things that were like taboo stuff that like you just had to get the guy out of there. And I think with Devil Fruits, when you look at most characters, they kind of fit the personalities of what they are, and it makes sense for certain things. I feel like the Yami Yami no Mi would make the most sense of what they were looking for as this treasure, because even if, let's say, the world government or the Celestial Dragons had no use for it, but they know its powers, Imu, for example, had to have known exactly what it was capable of. I think that was something that he wanted to go after because he knows if he has this, he could be able to do anything he wants against Imu, which is why when he said at the time, if I'm gonna come back here one day, don't you worry, it has a double meaning now, because if he's out the game, but Blackbeard's the one that's terrorizing Mary Joie, it's likely that he's the one that is fulfilling that promise of Rocks by showing up with the Yami Yami no Mi, now with the quick fruit of Whitebeard, and is going to cause the madness there. Yeah. But I would say the Yami Yami no Mi is the one that I'm trying to pin it on, because if I try to think of any other ones, I feel like it has to be something new, and I don't know how much more valuable, like maybe the Opi Opi no Mi, because I don't think at this point in time we knew anybody that had possession of that fruit up until I think Diaz Barrels, Drake's dad, had possession of it after. So maybe that's possibly the one that was there, and it would actually make sense to why Imu, is so coveted of it too, because again, if there's somebody that was performed the surgery of life to extend their immortality or whatever it is, then maybe they were able to find like somebody else who had possession of it as among those things, and then that's probably what Rocks was maybe looking for, to extend his immortality so he can actually become the king of the world.
Yeah, I really love the idea that, like, because going back to the Yami Yami is because, like I said, if Rocks actually had it, then it feels weird that nobody made the connection, like, whoa, you have the same powers as Rocks. But if that's one of the two he's looking for, and maybe he never found it, which ties to what you're talking about, where Blackbeard's going to fulfill that will, you could say, and go back and get the revenge because now he does have the power he needed. I feel like that makes a lot more sense because maybe Rocks would have just never told them the Yami Yami is what he's looking for, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he just never found it. And that could be why Blackbeard literally from day one was like, that's all I wanted was that fruit. Like, whenever I joined Whitebeard, it was all to get that fruit. I almost like lost hope. That's all I was doing. If I didn't find it, I would have given up, all that kind of stuff. That it could be the same thing as Rocks because maybe Rocks went there, met Emu, realized he couldn't beat Emu, and was like, well, if I'm going to, I need this devil fruit. And that's the whole story now. Is that's why. So it's almost like Blackbeard and Rocks' journeys are mirrored, where Rocks like got to the summit, but then realized he needed that fruit, and then spent his whole life looking for it and failed. So now Blackbeard's gonna do the opposite, where he spent his whole life looking for it and found it, and now is gonna go to the summit. So like they're inverted in a sense, which I really like that. Are you about to say something? Go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, because like another fruit that just came to mind right now. I don't know how likely it is because we have to know whether Rocks knows like the full lore behind it. But what if Luffy's Del fruit was also another candidate as well? Because as far as we know from what the Gorosei had stated before, every time that fruit has come back into circulation, it slipped through their hands every single time. And I think one of the most obvious situations that could probably make sense for it having slipped again in history was during the events of the God Valley. And if that ended up what was the case of, maybe that's what Xebec knew, because maybe he knew something about the Del fruit. Maybe he knew how to exactly like channel its powers and be able to utilize it. And we know from what Gunko has stated before, like, what is the one thing in the world you fear? It's Nika. We have seen what Emu has felt just from the haki of a knot, making them remember the person that they feared the most. If someone like Xebec, who was the only person in history, was able to pull up on Marijoa and do what they did, bearing the fruit that reminds them of their sworn enemy, I just think like it makes sense also too into the taboo-ness and everything, because it's like Rocks knew way too much. And I think that Del fruit with Luffy's now, it will also raise that importance even more, because at the time we just knew it as just regular rubber fruit. Now it has the stuff with Nika, the properties there connected to Joy Boy. Yeah. And I think it would give it more like of a significant value to it, because if it was something that Xebec was using to try and do what he wanted to do was become king of the world, then it just goes to show right there, man. That's probably now, I would say, one of the top fruits, and easily the value right there makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you think you just convinced me of something that I think when he says he's looking for 2 devil fruits, I think maybe the most likely is that it's the Yami Yami and the Nika fruit, because he realized that those are the 2 most important ones, and I think he wants the Yami Yami, which again maybe he never told anybody and got it, and that excuses why that nobody brought up the connection. But then if the other one's the Nika fruit, and this is going to get confusing for everybody, but if that was the one on Elbaf, then it might be the idea that like Harold would be the only one that he knows of who could awaken the Nika powers, kind of like Luffy did, fighting Kaido, which goes back to the whole Kaido, like you couldn't be Joy Boy either. It's like maybe he's waiting for the, like, kind of like how Rocks, if Rocks wanted Harold to awaken that power, it's almost like Kaido was waiting for somebody to come fight him who did so, right? So there's like a cool connection there. And now people might say, well, Loki ate the fruit, so how does Luffy have it if they both have eaten fruits? You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't connect, that like that legendary fruit would be the Nika fruit. And this leads to something that I've been saying for a while, which is there might just be 2, where one might just be a rubber fruit and one's a Nika fruit. Yeah. And there's 2 ways to reach the same power, because you go look at Bonnie. Bonnie went into Gear 5th without any rubber-based fruit. So we know that it's not a Nika exclusive thing anymore. Like, you can get to Gear 5th in other ways. And with Loki saying, like, I'm the sun god or whatever, and us also hearing about how some people view the sun god as a destroyer and some as a liberator, it's like, well, what if it's because you can have multiple Nikas and people just viewed them differently, but like the one true Nika, which would be Luffy in this case, like he is the liberator, that's the one you're looking for. But if you were to give a destructive person Nika powers, they would definitely destroy the world, right? So I think that's kind of the symbolism there. So I feel like that's really likely the more I think about it. So like maybe Harold, the way I would like it is if Loki actually has the Hito no Mi model Nika, because then he has a human fruit and he could shrink down and then fit on the ship. And then if Luffy actually has the Gomu Gomu, and like we were and the Gorosei just have it confused for some reason, which would be like a Shanks thing, I would imagine. Like maybe he lied to them. I don't know. That's like the most confusing part, is like the mix up. Yeah. But because that goes in an agenda I've had for a long time, where like when Luffy said, "I'm not a zone," a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's cool foreshadowing that like Luffy had it mixed up." I'm like, well, I think Luffy would know better than any. Like, if we're comparing the Gorosei saying it's a zone and Luffy saying it's not a zone, I lean more towards Luffy, because like Kaku ate that banana and knew he was a giraffe like instantly. Like, so I think Luffy would know he's a zone. So I think that would be the better angle, because like I said, that lets. Because, like, if Loki has the rubber fruit, I'm not sure if he really would get to shrink, maybe, with Awakening. But, like, if he has a human fruit model Nika, then he can easily, without effort, turn into a human, so...
Yeah, and then also if you look at it too as well, it would also explain a lot of times, even probably time skip, when like when Luffy was being beaten in fights, you know, how he was able to like regen so fast and get ready for the next fight afterwards. But I think if you were to really say when Luffy knew, I think the most likely situation, and I know it's kind of like it's a time period that obviously we were away from for so long and didn't get to see much of outside like little moments, but was when he was training with Rayleigh. I think if anyone was going to try and like explain to him, because like Rayleigh has to know exactly about that Del Fruit as well. You know what I mean?
True.
Like anyone who went to Laugh Tale, anyone who went to see everything that happened with the One Piece and stuff and knows anything about Joy Boy there probably knew about the Del Fruit stuff. So if anyone knew it without exactly saying, because I would say Rayleigh had to keep his honor too as well. It's like I can tell you what's happening, but it would just ruin the adventure. So he was trying to give like little details here and there, probably from training, and then Luffy maybe eventually picked up on it. But he's just not someone that's gonna go and comment on those kind of things. He's just gonna, hey, listen, if I have this power, I'm just gonna do what it is, right? So we probably won't see that from him until like the end of the story, when he starts to become a bit more like a news analyst, I guess you could say, about what his own stuff is, like a tactical guy or whatever. But yeah, I feel like that's just what's gonna end up being the case. I think like Luffy, like if he knew at that time, I think Rayleigh played a hand in it for sure, because I think if he knew that already before, that we would have had instances in the story, even like pre-time skip, that he was aware that he was something else. And I think even Impel Down, you know, you go back to like all the Minotaurus and stuff afterwards. Maybe that's like one of the first inklings as well. It's like, hold on, he's doing something that I can do. But it's one of those things, obviously, Oda's not going to tell you. It's like, I think you have to really pay attention to certain details in Luffy just to see whether or not he knows. But that's also just down for speculation too.
Yeah, because I always found it weird that like every single zone fruit in the story, and I know the Nika fruit's special, it's mythical, whatever, but literally every zone fruit, as soon as you eat it, you get access to the three forms, right? Your normal form, the full beast, and the hybrid. Luffy was just rubber the second he ate it, right? And he never went back into non-rubber Luffy mode. He never went into like a weird hybrid Nika thing. Like the only transformation he has is the Awakening, and I always thought that was just like a little odd, because yes, it's a human fruit, so he's not going to change substantially. But if Nika's a rubber human, there should at least be a non-rubber Luffy and a rubber Nika version. And so I don't know. I feel like there's something there. I don't know if like maybe Oda will explain it away another way, but there's also the whole thing where Luffy's like, I'm not Nika. Like I don't even know who that is. I don't care. Like he'll never want to be that god. And so I almost think like if the story ends up being where he is just a rubber kid, but because his personality is like the god that they're talking about, that's almost better than him like just getting the powers of the god, if that kind of makes sense. Like he's not he's not literally becoming that person. He's just, you know, his personality is already enough. He just needs to be rubberized, and that's it.
Yeah, because I was just thinking even now too, like going back to like the mural and stuff. If you remember from the first world, how those people were carrying like these balls of lights and stuff after those going through whatever. So because obviously like, you know, it's in the same vein with like Roger. Like even though we saw like he died, we don't know where the body is. In the case, like that's how I always felt. Like if there's no body, I'm just not gonna believe that they're dead completely. But in the case though for Joy Boy or for Nika, what if the possibility that during the Void Century, when they were killed, per se, was more so that they were converted from in a human form into Del Fruits, which would also explain why the resemblance to Nika is such there, because they were literally turned into Del Fruits. And maybe that probably explains away from back in the day, like how those fruits were created, because you have to remember, imagination was like the biggest key. Like anything you can imagine of could become a power. And if that's what, let's say, Emu had done to force them into like a Del Fruit, like it's just a hypothetical that's there, but if that's something that happened, it would also explain exactly why all those properties, all those things about Joy Boy are so embedded into that Del Fruit, because there's just no way somebody's imagination was just to do all this stuff. It would make sense if like the actual properties of that thing would turn into the Del Fruit that eventually Luffy would consume. And then that's why it would show like, you know, Tsunisha was so familiar with what's going on with the Drums Liberation, because it's literally what Joy Boy was doing.
Yeah.
That's why Emmett was so, I feel like that's Joy Boy because of those things. Like, it has to be a lot more, and I think that's like the darker side of the devil fruits that we're probably going to learn at some point. And whether that Garden of Eden actually exists, which I still believe like Mary Joie might have something to do with that.
For sure.
Because we saw like the Tree of Adam, we saw this Eve tree as well down in Fishman Island. There has to be some kind of garden. I feel like the location of where Emu is probably going to explain how these people have their dull fruits. And it probably also makes sense too how they were able to get rid of all the people that they did back in that time and stuff, because they're literally trapped in the place that used to be their home, which I've done a video a long time ago and stuff saying how the ancient kingdom is actually Mary Joie. And like, if you're going to disrespect your enemies in the worst way possible, you take their home. On the outside it's you, but in the inside it's still home. But that's like a long time from there, so I don't know if Oda will ever play something like that, but it's a hypothetical.
Yeah, well, no, I think you're cooking, especially with like the first thing you said with like people getting trapped in devil fruits, essentially. Because you brought up like the first world part with these guys carrying the energy up, because pretty much what you said is exactly what I said in my mural video. So we're on the same page completely, because these guys carrying up this energy, I'm thinking that's like the forbidden sun. This translation isn't. I feel like the official was the best one. The TCG was solid, but they took a little more liberties. But I think that's like the forbidden sun energy from like inside the earth. And I'm thinking that one of these guys, the enslaved, because it says the enslaved prayed. I feel like one of these guys almost realized, wait, we can use this energy to do stuff. And then so one of them became Nika because they got their dreams came true or whatever because of this power. And then I kind of like you said, I think they got trapped in devil fruits because in the second world, it literally talks about how the forest god, I think in the official it says tamed demons. And I'm like, okay, so the forest god taming demons, so devil fruits, forest god, you got a tree devil connection right there. I'm wondering if that's a signal that like in the first world, because they had access to this energy, a bunch of people got crazy powers because they literally, you had the enslaved people who were super desperate carrying the all-powerful energy, like it just backfired on them at some point. And then once the Void Century started, Emu's like, well, I got to figure this out. I can't end them completely, but I can lock them away.
Exactly.
And you also see this dragon on top of the tree, and you were just talking about like Garden of Eden stuff. Like we have Emu up in the flower room where we presume the top of the Eve tree is. And I think that's just all a symbol. Like Emu might be the forest god. Emu's responsible for trapping him in devil fruits. And so I think you're cooking 100%.
Yeah,
I'm
even like I know even that middle portion we saw there with Frankie and everything. I feel like that's also going to be some importance too eventually at some point. Where like I feel like he's covering something that by the end of this arc is going to make something that we're like thinking on make sense and just tie things up a little bit better. Whatever that has to do, maybe with whatever happened in the God Valley, or something to do with like Elbaf's like history and stuff, potentially. But it's man.
Yeah, I that's one of those things that like I'm not banking on it, but I would love it if that was true. Like there's one little bit we don't see, and it kind of brings it all together. Like I don't know what it would, because like maybe like a Nika symbol, but we already see Nika on there, so like what's that gonna do? So I don't know what it would be. Maybe like the world government symbol, or maybe like the ancient kingdom symbol. I don't know. Maybe something. But yeah, I'm with you. But all right, we're gonna get back into the chapter here, a different part of the chapter rather, something you and I talked about a little bit before we started recording, which is the Gloriosa situation and the Shaki situation. No, we're not gonna talk about the controversy.
No.
With Roger trying to steal Shaki, because that is definitely questionable. But there's enough people out there talking about that I feel like everyone gets the shadiness there with Roger. But as for the Gloriosa thing, it's interesting because you said this earlier, but Gloriosa eventually joined the Rocks Pirates, and so kind of what's the story there? I presume that she just wanted to get revenge or whatever on Roger, or like get closer to him because Rocks is obviously going to keep clashing with him. But I think it also means that Boa's going to join the Cross Guild to fulfill that parallel, so that she gets revenge on Luffy, because there's obviously a parallel going here. So first, I just want to get your thoughts on that, on Gloriosa, and kind of how you see that unfolding, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, like, when you look at her, right, like, obviously we knew, like, what her situation, she was the captain of the Kucha Pirates. They were very, very popular back in the day and everything. Obviously, their popularity went to, like, next levels because of Shakiyaku, and obviously, you know, the controversy that comes from, you know, trying to go and claim her and everything. But we know that she had the love sickness, Gloriosa, which eventually led to her stepping down. Shaki took over after, and then eventually, somewhere between that and the God Valley incident, Gloriosa ended up joining the Rocks Pirates. Now, obviously, we know that the first person that she fell in love with and contracted the love sickness was with Roger, and he definitely didn't reciprocate that at all. He just, you know, his stuff is his stuff. But I've always been the idea that maybe exactly that's not the case the whole way through. And I mean by that is that even though she loved Roger and eventually joined up with the Rocks Pirates, yeah, maybe she wanted to get revenge or something afterwards. But I do think that there's a possibility that maybe she had a connection afterwards with Rocks, because obviously for her to go and join up with them, there's got to be more deeper reason than, you know, trying to get back at somebody, especially knowing that the Rocks Pirates, their main goal was going after the Holy Lands, going after what was there in Elbaf, and especially doing what they need to do over in the God Valley. So I feel like there's probably a deeper meaning behind it rather than just like out of love. Maybe there was something else from Gloriosa that you know, was of interest, whatever, right? I mean, if you were to really go into like the hyperbolic of like crazy ideas, right? And obviously we don't know who Teach's mom is, but if you're gonna throw candidates up there, possibly, because again, she's still alive, she's still there, whatever, but I would not throw away the idea that Neon may have something to do with Teach brought up into the world. And as crazy as that may end up sounding, for Gloriosa to end up being with the crew, and we gotta remember, before the events of God Valley is when Teach was born in Shade Port. If I'm not mistaken, was about 40 so years ago, 2 years prior to the events in God Valley. And obviously we know Shanks was born during that time, and I believe it was the year after the God Valley incident is when Buggy was born. So there's a lot of stuff there that still needs to be clarified and stuff. But for Granny Neon, Gloriosa, I think that there's probably a twist where it's like, you know, she did care for Roger at some point in time and stuff, love him, but I think that switched over to Rocks. But that would need to be shown, obviously, when we get back with the manga afterwards from the break week and see that. Because I do feel like that's going to be one of the first things that we get right away of how she joins in.
Yeah, and it is interesting now that I think about it, because she's also the one who didn't die from love sickness, right?
Right.
And if she, and we know she never got with Roger, or at least like not full time, because Roger ended up having kids with somebody else, right? Or well, a kid with somebody else. So it is interesting to think about it from that angle, where she was able to survive it. So is it because she found someone else, or did she almost maybe find a reason to not like Roger anymore? Which, like, I mean, if there was ever a reason, I feel like this chapter
after what happened,
but,
yeah.
I mean,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but no, it is interesting. Like, I mean, I would be beyond shocked if she ended up being either of their moms, like Blackbeard or Buggy. But I mean, we don't really have another good candidate yet. So we do have like a little bit from Oda's, like he had like some sketches with Blackbeard's mom,
two sisters and stuff and everything. Yeah,
but that's not like canon. Like the sketches usually don't end up being what the people look. I mean, sometimes, but usually they're quite a bit different. So yeah, I don't know. But another interesting angle to this is that because Gloriosa did that and she joined the Rocks Pirates, which, by the way, that could have just been a Davy Back fight. We don't, you know.
That's also true too, yeah. Because
right?
we don't, you know, the Kucha Pirates, again, they were very highly popular at the time, and there was no moment where Xebec had stopped doing the Davy Back fights. I'm pretty sure, like, the only difference I think was at the time was when Kyo had pulled up afterwards, and that was more so him wanting to join rather than losing a fight and then going in afterwards. So the Davy Back fights, for all we know, could have been continuing on, and that actually would be very interesting, that the Kucha Pirates would end up losing one of their members through that method, rather than just saying love sickness and, you know, I'm out of a job and stuff. But like, that would be crazy, and that would take a really big hit to their popularity, losing like one of their members through the Davy Back fight. Because you imagine if they lost Shaki during that, because I mean, that could also be another thing too. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know about that we could find out through this whole flashback. As
far as the Davy Back fights, I think it's really interesting, because I think it's 50-50, where like a lot of the Davy Back fights he did before they had the flag. Because we saw that in a couple chapters ago, where like at the end of the chapter it says like he would send shockwaves throughout the world because Rock's plan had finally reached its fruition, right? So it's like because once you have the flag, you can lose the entire crew from a Davy Back fight. If you don't have a flag and you're just a random group that isn't like well established or organized, then they can only take individual people. At least that's what I think he was scheming on. Is like, you know, I just won't let them do that. And so once he has one, in my mind, it might be smart for him to stop, so that way he doesn't lose the whole crew. But then I also like thinking, what if God Valley was just a Davy Back fight? What if that's the reason Roger and Garp had to team up? So it was the Rocks Pirates versus Garp, Roger Pirates, government, whatever, in a big... Yeah. And that, because it would still end in a fight, so we still get that gloriousness, but like I don't even know, like the comedy that could come from having these great pirates be forced to like get on a ship, or not even just pirates, because the world government's on one side, you know, and it's like for the fate of the world, like that's the thing that makes it hard for me to believe, is like there'd be so many stakes for the government. Like the government's like, we're pretty much risking our right as the leaders, because like we would lose our flag like if we're gonna use the typical rules.
Yeah.
So I almost see it, so I don't know how that would really go down, but I think that'd be fun. But as for Gloriosa, because she joined, she lost her spot as Empress, and that's what made Shaki take over. And then Shaki, I forget exactly what the story is, but she also suffered from love sickness, but she left, I think is what Oda said in the SBS, to go be with Rayleigh, and so then she got to survive because she wasn't suffering from it anymore.
Right.
But then Trtoma actually died from it, and I want to talk about her because I've heard a lot of theories that people think she could still be Luffy's mom, which to me, I don't think that. I mean, is it possible? Sure.
It's not a bad idea. But,
it's not impossible, but for me, I'm not seeing it, because I think for one thing, she died 13 years ago, so Luffy would have been like 6, or was it 13 years ago? Whatever. He would have been around 6 years old. And people say, well, maybe she got love sickness because she was away from her kid, and she couldn't bear to be away from her son, and she died. And I get the deeper, levels to that it could be appealing, because like she just loved Luffy so much, and Luffy had like a truly loving mom and whatever. But I also think, like, Luffy would never give up like that, right? Like, Luffy would never, ever get separated from someone and die from being just so sad of being separate. He would be like, I'm going to go fight to go be with them, or I'm going to prepare for the next time I get to see them, whatever, right? Exactly. So that's, like, my biggest issue. And also because if we're going to use that timeline, that also matches up with around the time Shanks met Makino when he went to Fuchsia Village. So I'm thinking that Trtoma just loved Shanks, but he started getting with Shaki, and so she died because she realized that he's going to not be with her, right? I think that fits a lot better, because then the 4 people that the Empresses fell in love with are Roger, Rayleigh, Shanks, and then Luffy. And those people are all, like, connected, but disconnected enough to where I think it all fits. Like, none of them are related, but they're all in the same vein of, like, good, strong people, right? They all have kind of the same will in certain ways. So I think that fits better, but I know there's a lot of people, certainly, that support the Trtoma theory. So what do you think? Are you on the Luffy's mom agenda?
Yeah, it's just like, it's weird, right? Because obviously the only things that we know about her is she was carrying fan letters and stuff for both Gloriosa and for Shaki. So it's like, to build a personality there, to make her into Dragon's wife, and obviously, of course, Luffy's mom would be very difficult to just pin all that to make sense of it. But like you were saying before, a lot of Luffy's personality, I do not see that coming from Dragon, unless, again, because a certain incident had to have happened that changed, because we don't know Dragon with his younger days or anything. Like, Garp really doesn't like talk about him like that in detail and stuff, and I feel like that's obviously going to be its own thing, even though it's been like 1100 some chapters and we've been kind of waiting on Dragon for a bit. But in the case of like Luffy's mom, I'm still the big believer of the whole thing that she was probably a celestial dragon, or someone of like high notoriety at the time and stuff, that Dragon had met during his time, in the Marines, and then eventually what ended up happening afterwards, led to him going down the path of becoming the leader of the Revolutionary Army, possibly. But yeah, it's just interesting, because with Trtoma, it's just like, I don't even know, like, because the fact that Oda kind of like written her out of the story before now, just starting to talk about her at this moment, doesn't feel like she's going to be that all important. But the fact that she's the one that was the predecessor, so Boa obviously was the one that succeeded from her afterwards, but you would think that all of them have something important going about them, right? Gloriosa, obviously the one that ended up bringing back the siblings and stuff with Boa and her sisters and stuff after, and then Shaki, I think it was, Trtoma was the one that allowed them to come back onto the island, if I'm mistaken.
Right.
So
there's
like, there's a lot of importance.
Back in,
Precisely. So there's like a lot of importance there. But then the fact that she just up and dies from love sickness, it's like you have to think that there was somebody of importance possibly there. Now, I have to see the again, the age charts and stuff are very dangerous world to play in or whatever, but there had to have been someone of grand importance that was alive around the time of Trtoma and stuff that was maybe involved and everything. Because if I'm not mistaken, right now, Shanks obviously wasn't born during that time. And if you were going to try and do a parallel between Boa and Luffy in the current time, I would not be surprised if Trtoma and Shanks or somebody in that caliber is what led to Trtoma getting the love sickness and eventually dying. But as far as getting more from her, I mean, we would have to see through this flashback, honestly, because other than that, I think she's just one of those, she was there in the moment, delivering letters, she died. That's about it. We can say on her, man.
Yeah, and I feel like this is sometimes controversial, but I think it's on the money. Whenever Oda reveals something it's kind of important in an SBS, it means that he has given up explaining it in the main story. Like when Trtoma was first introduced in the SBS and he gave us some details about like the timelines and what happened. To me, that's a signal from Oda where like, hey, I don't think I'm going to fit this in the main story. I don't think it's going to be that important, so I'm just going to tell you here, right? Like, you go back to, like, Rocky Port, which was something that I was super excited to hear about.
I was angry not getting that, man. Like, I'm so pissed that day.
Yeah, but once he does give it in the SBS, it's kind of like, all right, so I guess Oda doesn't have a big plan for, like, and maybe he did, and he just is, he's just, it's just like excess, like he doesn't have that much time, so he's like, I'm gonna get rid of a few things here and just tell you in the SBS. And so I think whenever the second that Trtoma was introduced in an SBS, I thought that was the death sentence for that being Luffy's mom, because he's just not. He would have drummed it up a way different way. Like whenever we see Luffy's mom, she's gonna be, like you said, maybe a celestial dragon, but bare minimum, someone like really important of like high stature, and maybe not even celestial dragon could work, but even if Luffy's mom ended up being like a bartender. She's gonna be something like super well respected and strong and, like kind to people. Like she's gonna stand out in a major way. But Trtoma being revealed in an SBS and then her first thing is just carrying fan letters, it's like she kind of feels like secondary. You know what I mean? So I don't think I think maybe I'll be wrong. We the timelines work. She could be, but I don't think so. I think
because I think if I'm mistaken, like I think she's like closer to Dragon in age, if I'm not mistaken, than anyone else. Because Dragon right now, he's like what, in his 50s?
He's 55, and she is she's probably like 15ish right now. We don't really know, 15, 18, 16, somewhere around there. Let's just say 15. And this was 44 years ago, so she would be 59 now, so she would have died when she was 46. But so she would have been 4 years older than Roger, basically.
I mean that is the thing, because like I don't know, I feel like, again, like you said there, like if you're throwing into the SBS, and like it would be difficult to see more coming out of it and everything. But I don't know, at the same time too, you go back to the Rocky Port incident you just brought up right now, because we're seeing now Wang Ji in this whole thing, and obviously they were a big part of it. I mean, they were the one that was ruling Hachinosu post what happened to Xebec before Blackbeard eventually went on there and ended up taking it after for himself.
Right.
So I mean, the fact that we're actually getting to see them and everything, and they're having like dialogue and stuff, it feels like at some point we are going to see like a snippet of their time and stuff in the story before whatever happened, they get taken out and everything. I feel like maybe there's a chance with Trtoma we might see more, and I think the only way it could be done is either through this flashback or Boa has to like bring them up of like some kind of importance. But at the same time too, like we gotta know like the mothers in these situations. Like we don't know, like in the case like Granny Neon, we don't know the mom. We don't know the mom for Shaki. Don't know for Trtoma. Don't know for Boa. At some point in time, these parents are gonna have to matter. Someone like how did they just didn't come out of an egg, unless it's the one on the ship right now for Roger. Maybe that's gonna explain it.
Yeah,
but it's that has to be
That's always been one of my biggest problems is like the Amazonians. There's not a ton of genetic diversity. Whatever's going on, like even if Boa and Elder Neon and Shaki and Trtoma aren't like directly related, like mother-daughter, they're still not going to be that far off just because of the way that the island reproduces. Basically, we're cutting it too close.
It is a
we're
very
cutting
dangerous world playing in.
Even if Oda goes through the trouble of explaining like, oh, their families are the most different of all on Amazon. I'm like, bro, it's still too close, man. I'm not comfortable with it. Please, there's so many other better things. You do a celestial dragon, man, or do a bartender out in a random, bar. Do like another Didon. Like I don't know. You could think of something that would be just not. It's just cutting it too close. That's all.
No, for sure.
And it's also like, don't double up the plot line. Like if a woman's gonna love Luffy from a certain island, don't have his mom also be from there, because it's like, just let's spread the love a little bit.
Yeah, of course,
so,
for sure, yeah.
But I got a couple other things I want to talk about here, mainly revolving Rocks, and I want to start here. Captain John here is telling Rocks, in response to that devil fruit thing, we'll need those Galley-la folks too, yeah, right? But I've heard the legends, but... And then Big Mom says she can't find them. And so that got me thinking, well, why would somebody be looking for Galley-la? Well, they're a group of shipwrights. So what are you going to go find a group of shipwrights for? To build you a ship.
Yeah.
And also, at this point in the story, because like they could go to Galley-la, there's a lot of other places they could go to, but why would they go to Galley-la? Well, they're supposed to be giants, or even ancient giants. And as Rocks just said before this, he's kind of still expecting Harold to join the crew, or he wants Harold to join. And if you're going to have an ancient giant with a devil fruit on a ship, or like sailing with you, you're going to need a massive ship, right? Otherwise, how are you going to fit the guy on the boat? How are you going to take him around? I mean, San Juan Wolf kind of cheats the whole system, but like I don't know if every giant can do that, because he's got the giant fruit or whatever. So I think they're trying to find Galley-la to make a giant ship, like Noah-sized maybe, that Harold can then fit on, and that's going to be their ship. And then that got me thinking, well, what if that ship is the Saber of Xebec, the ship that we know Blackbeard has, right?
Yeah,
because here's the thing, we've wondered, why hasn't Blackbeard used the Saber of Xebec? We know he has it from Road to Laugh-Tale and Beaver cards and stuff like that, but we've never confirmed see it. Like, some people think it could be one of the log rafts or something, but he's always had log raft type things. If Oda's going to reveal the Saber of Xebec, it's going to be like a big moment where it's like, you know, we're going to see the ship, it's going to look different, there's going to be an intro box, like he's going to have a name title card thing. Mm-hmm. So then I was like, well, if the Saber of Xebec is a massive Noah-sized ship, then it makes sense why Blackbeard hasn't used it, because just for practicality. Like, you're not going to bring this massive ship with you everywhere, you're going to take a smaller thing, or... You know, now Van Augur can warp people, which you can't do it over the whole ocean, but that makes everything a lot easier. But regardless, he makes sense why they wouldn't bring that ship around. So I think we're about to see the construction of the Saber of Xebec. And basically where my kid video went is that I think the person who built this that they're about to find, I think that ended up being like Kid's inspiration. Like Kid knew this guy. Like after this guy built this. Because remember, Tom made the Oro Jackson, which, by the way, that's the big parallel here is, if you're going to have a Galley-la guy build the Rocks pirate ship, you should have a Galley-la guy build the Rocks pirate ship. And Frankie is from the South Blue. Yeah. He's an engineer type guy. Kid from the South Blue, engineer type guy. Also has Vegapunk connections with all the punk attack names. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that whoever built this ship he wasn't their shipwright, because even for the Roger Pirates, Blue Marine was their shipwright, but Tom built the ship. And so I think they have the same thing where this guy didn't actually join the Rocks Pirates, but they contracted him to build the ship, and then he was probably just living in the South Blue, and then he met Kid, and that's Kid's like Shanks or Tom, essentially. So I just want to get your response to some of that. You don't even have to talk about the Kid stuff, because I know Kid... Believe me, I got enough comments. I know Kid is a questionable character, but
yeah, man.
But as far as the Galley-la, do you like the Saber of Xebec idea, or do you have any other ideas?
Well, it's interesting because like we're going on down the line of Galleria. Eventually, he's going to talk about the ancient giants and stuff, right? Because I thought you were going to go into the idea that he was going to build his own Pluton, because if you remember exactly, right, the blueprints by this point in time are still in existence, right? And obviously, the big thing I keep on mentioning back in the video so far is that like Xebec knew things that he shouldn't have known. He knew the taboos and stuff. Well, what if those taboos, because again, we know Roger had met up with, you know, Tom and all these other people around his journeys and stuff. Who's to say that Xebec was not doing the exact same thing, but obviously for a different means, right? Roger was visiting people, being friendly with people, and getting to know what was going on every island, whereas Xebec was pretty much a guy that just went there and tried and take what he could. And what if he was able to understand and learn the properties of how to build a Pluton? Well, it would make sense why he would need the ancient giants, the Galley-la, the shipwrights and stuff, because again, rocking around with like warhammers and all that and stuff, right? Yep. If you're going to build a massive ship in the form of a Pluton, you're going to need something like that. And if you're going to try and command them, the best way you can do it is having the King of Elbaf on your side with his Del Fruit that's there. Now, I also saw the idea that some people were saying, and I started clicking in my mind, like, I think Gecko Moria, his Devil Fruit now just became a little bit more important in the grand scheme of things if Blackbeard was to try and replicate this method now. Because say like he was to get that Devil Fruit, we know that he could be able to revive the dead per se, right? Well, how are you going to revive a bunch of dead corpses just through whatever means? Well, if you have that Devil Fruit that brings them back, and I guess if you have, like, in conjunction with the Devil Fruit that's in Elbaf, that whatever it is, it can apparently control people or something, whatever, by using that to build a ship that will be appropriate to the same size and same destruction as the world's worst battleship in Pluton, I think that also would be another idea that Xebec maybe was trying to go for. Because if you think about it, he was trying to build his crew off of Davy Back and stuff, and maybe eventually realized the ship that I have can only hold so much. I mean, I have Whitebeard that's literally like 10-something feet. Kaido is massive. Barbell is the most massive of everybody that's there.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to talk about him in a second. Bro, that guy, that craziest design in a long time. But...
No, absolutely. And it's like when you think about all the amount of people are there, at some point you need to build a massive ship. And like I think if you have the Galleria there and all that, trying to build your own version of Pluton, I think it would make the most sense for Xebec, because again, he wanted to bring down this world. He wanted to rule as the king, but he also wanted to destroy the Holy Land. How are you going to do that? Maybe having one of the ancient weapons. And if you can't get it from Wano, because we know it's sealed away, we know the existence of his blueprints, we know it can be rebuilt. And how you do that? You get the Galleria after. So, like you were saying, it kind of like almost mirrors in a way of with Roger mean people through the way of good, and now we're seeing like the evil ways of doing it. It's just a matter of now, like, how that time is going to work, right? Because obviously we're almost a couple years removed away from when the God Valley incident is going to happen, so there's still a lot of period that we still need to cover and see be explained. But yeah, when I saw you were talking about that right there before the Saber of Xebec, I'm thinking if you talk about the Pluton, that actually is a very scary possibility of what they're going for. So
well, no, you're cooking, because here's the thing, couple things is. Well, what if Galley-la just built Pluton, right? So, like, the Galley-la members of the past built it, so it's like...
And I think that's a very likely situation. I do definitely think that's a thing, yeah.
Because I definitely think they built the Noah. And if the people who built the Noah also made Pluton, like, it would maybe make sense that the same group made all the ancient weapon, related ships or whatever. But I think you're cooking for a few different reasons. So, you mentioned Moria a little bit. I want to start there. Because, you talk basically about the idea that, like, maybe the Shadow Fruit can, revive some, or not revive, but animate some of these corpses of these Galley-la guys. And now, would they, like, keep the memories? Like, would they even know how to build ships? Like, I don't really know how that would work. Maybe if you put a good shipwright's shadow in it, maybe, like, because, like, some of the traits of the body made it through, but not all of them. So maybe if you picked a good shadow, it might work. But here's the thing, man. This is why I had to add 10 minutes onto the kid video, because I even have more stuff that I just couldn't really say, because I was like, I got to get this video done. And I did bring this up in the video, but did we ever see Moria animate an ancient giant?
No, I'm aside from Oars.
Oars. What? So we know Oars as the ancient giant from Thriller Bark, but what's the word Oars normally mean? What is that? It's normally for a ship. It's like your paddles, right? Giant paddles.
Yep.
So if Oars is going to be named that, and you just mentioned Moria brought, or that Shadow Fruit could bring back some of these Galley-la guys, what if it already did? What if Oars was a Galley-la member, and that's why he's named Oars? What if he was the continent puller, because he would be like the oars for a ship, like he was strong at, like, he probably good enough at shipbuilding too, to like bring islands to different places, which, by the way, what is Iceberg doing right now? Turning Water 7 into a ship so it can float. And by the way, his name is Iceberg. Oars was frozen. These Galley-la giants are frozen. And Saul was frozen. All these giants keep getting frozen. The guy named Iceberg is turning an island into a ship. We have Oars over here who got animated. Like, Oda, I'm telling you, man, Oda. And also Thriller Bark is an island that is a ship. Oda's got some Galaxy Brain 5D chess brewing here. So I'm thinking that Oars was in Galley-la, and because he also died 500 years ago. Right. Giants can live well over 300, so he could have easily been alive in the Void Century. So what if he might have been one of the people who built the Noah, and maybe he also built part of Pluton, and maybe if Moria was Galaxy Brain enough, he could have realized that and used that to his advantage somehow, but instead he put Luffy's shadow in there, and Luffy's just like a fun fighter guy, so it's not like he's not thinking that hard. But maybe that's kind of what their plan is to do what Moria did. Go find these frozen giants, these frozen ancient giants from the Void Century that built ships, and bring them back to life to, well, build ships and be like an army. I would imagine they want to use them to fight. Yeah. But yeah, are you on the Oars and Galley-la agenda? Oh, wait, one other thing. Sorry to interrupt. But also, have you ever looked at the Galley-la logo?
It's very similar to the one, if you go back to Punk Hazard and you look at the one guy's arm and stuff, it's exactly the same one as the Galley-la.
Oh, I don't even know what you're talking about.
So if you go back to Punk Hazard, when the Frozen Hall, I think it is, when Nami and Chopper had gone inside and they saw like the double spread, like the massive giants and stuff all around them. If you go look at specifically one, I think it's on the corner of Nami. If you look on the arm, you see them sporting a tattoo that is that of the Galley-la. I think this is around somewhere in the 600s, 660s.
That's crazy.
Something like that, yeah. And that was the thing. Like, it was noted immediately as soon as I think it was Ja Rule was talking about, this frozen tribe of giants like locked away somewhere. Immediately, that's what came to mind after. So like, there's a lot of people that think that there is a significance between the Galley-la and the Galleria. Yes, that's the one there. So like, yeah, if you go back and look at that image exactly,
yep,
you're good. Yeah. And you see that's there. It's actually very frightening. If you zoom in, I think it's, I'm trying to remember which one it was, like gray.
Yeah, here, give me a second. I'm just trying to.
You're good, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get the highest quality one because it's gonna get real grainy here whenever I zoom in, but because I got a lot of thoughts on these guys here.
Yeah, because
which direction?
It speaks, it's on left hand side, I think. Here, hold on, let me see. Yeah, because on Discord it's a little bit tough. Yeah, I think it's here. Zoom down a little bit more. No. Hold on. So the guy with it looks like the mohawk one right there on the right side. Look at his bicep right there on his right arm.
Right here? Can you see my cursor? I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, so go to more top right.
Right here. This one?
Right there. So if you look at that mark right there, it's very reminiscent to that of the actual
bro, no, you're cooking. I see it. It's sideways. I see it. I see what you're talking about. Oh,
exactly,
bro.
Yeah. And that's covered, like, why, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would Oda purposely do something like that? Because that's one of those like super giga brain details that like he tries to hide behind with certain stuff. And I feel like now it makes a lot of sense that at some point in time they had to like learn the Galley-la from somebody, right? And the people that lived the longest, that were doing this for the longest of times, was the Galleria. So now it's like, they were saying like, oh, why is it different pronunciations? No, well, they copied from the same group. They were probably connected at some point in time, or they passed by during the travel. So like, yeah, I definitely think those are the exact same people, because otherwise, why would you talk about a place of frozen giants locked away somewhere than where we seen before in the story in Punk Hazard? People think that was just a moment of just whatever. No, it is a massive detail. And I think also why they're talking about the whole regeneration, reviving and stuff, which was why I think Moria's fruit is going to be the case there, is that if he does bring them back, I think it's one of those cases where like muscle memory is so important, where I don't know if it's something that after like a Hunter situation where then after death or whatever, where it's like, as long as it's still within them, as long as they get the right person, the right ship right, they'll be able to know how to exactly make this. So yeah, the fact is, if somebody were to go ahead and look at Punk Hazard right now and see this right there, they have struck a gold mine to make their own Pluton.
What could be interesting is like, what if you put in, I mentioned putting in other shipwright shadows into them, but maybe you could also even put the shadows of like their descendants. So like, it's like the will is like inherited and brought back. You know what I'm saying? Because like you usually inherit the will from like your ancestors. And honestly, you also got to remember the any Galley-la descendants, which going back to Oars had one, little Oars Jr., who is actually, his status is unknown right now. I doubt he's dead, because if Oda's not even going to say he's dead in the Beaver card,
it'd just be very weird to do that. Yeah, exactly.
Because if he says he's dead in the Beaver card, I'm still kind of questionable. But if he says unknown, then I'm like, oh, he's alive, 100%. Sure. But either way, since he had a descendant, then it means there's probably other Galley-la descendants. So what if that's the idea? Like, you want to put those descendants' shadows back in. So no, dude, you're cooking. And here's the thing: is that's not even what I was going to say about the logo, but you were completely cooking. But if you look at the Galley-la logo, dude, it's a long Viking ship with a bunch of oars. That's literally all it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the oars idea, it's like it might have been hidden all along that there's a Galley-la and oars sort of connection because of that. So, and the fact it's a Viking ship is like, okay, we should have known this all along, that something's going on.
Precisely. And even like if you go back to even like when I was mentioning the blueprints, right? For me, it feels like those blueprints never belonged to the Galley-la, so like the human side of things. It probably had belonged at one point in time as a parting gift, maybe to the Galleria. Because like you were saying before, if Oars was around 500 or so years ago, and we had just found out, it wasn't too long ago either, that Ja Rule had gotten a letter saying that they've been captured and eventually put into the freezing process. So within like the last 100 to 50 years is when that hell happened. Something probably happened with Oars where like he just kind of like dipped and kind of did his own thing afterwards, which led to him in his situation where Mori was able to find him and do what he had to do. And
or he was looking for the other frozen ones. Like maybe that's why he. Oh, dude, that's what it is. He was in a frozen place because he's looking for his frozen friends.
Yeah.
Oh my!
That could be
God,
the case, yo. Oh my
that's
god,
it.
that would be crazy.
That's it. That's it. I'm telling you, that's it. Lock that in.
We might have got it.
Kill the locksmith. So you won't have to unlock that one. Oh, dude, bro, that's happening.
Oh my god! And then Oars Jr. is gonna be the one that has to try and find them after because he's the only one still alive. But again, my boy missing a leg. So, oh man.
Next time we see a little Oars Jr., he's gonna be on Punk Hazard. I'm telling you.
Oh my god.
He's gonna be the next one to find him. Dude, that's so good. By the way, just before I close this page, I just gotta say, there's a lot of One Piece shirts out there that that are pretty cool. But sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I want to wear a Luffy shirt out to like a general function. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I need something a little more mellow sometimes. Like if I want to rep One Piece, I need to like do it stylistically so people don't think I'm just crazy for wearing Gear Fifth or whatever like all over. But hey, this Galley-la logo, you see this shirt, man? This right here. Oh, can you? Yeah, you guys.
Yeah, I can see it right there.
Yeah. Yo, I will wear that. Like that is that's dope. And people will be like, hey, what's that? Like, I got too much to tell you, man. Like I don't know
exactly. Have you heard the story of One Piece? Like
yeah, this one actually, you guys can barely see it. Resizing this was really hard for some reason, but this one up here, that might be the one. Galley-la Company. Oh, that's the kind of merch I want, man.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't do more of that, honestly. Like, when I see some of the designs for, like, One Piece, like, how do you advertise your series and just, that's, like, what you have there when there's so much more potential and these other things that are there. But,
yeah.
Hey, man, all I know is Oars is about to do a madness very soon in the story, bro, and I can't, it would not, again, like, how we still are thinking about how exactly, like, Elbaf is going to end or where the direction of things are going. Listen, we know Oars, it's been a minute since we last saw him, and at some point in time, Grand Fleet and stuff may come back into the mix or whatever. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever if Oars is, like, making his way back to Elbaf, because if you can't figure out your own way to anything else, wherever it is, the best thing, of course of action, is to go back home. Now, whether if that home is actually in Elbaf, or, again, a residency that he took place and stuff, like, just think about it. With Zunisha, too, they were, like, walking around for a long time, just because of a punishment, but we knew, like, their time and stuff was whatever the Ancient Kingdom or in Wano and stuff, so they're familiar with certain things. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. That's the same thing with most of the giants, and especially with Oars. I mean, that would be a crazy way to have them come back.
Dude, Oars. Oars is about to have a sad story, man. We're about to look back on Thriller Bark and feel so much worse for the guy. Like, oh
my god, yeah. And even just Punk Hazard, just in general, knowing what we know now after, like, it's crazy. Like when people say, like, like there's some arcs are just not important or whatever, but it's like, no, that's not true, man. Like, to all these arcs, there's gonna be something that's there and just gonna blow your mind after. Like, for all 100%. Like even Long Ring Long Island, like even the stuff that we're seeing right now in Elbaf, that arc is just even more important too now because of that stuff. It's like, oh my god.
Oh yeah, I've never felt so validated than whenever the Davy Back fights came back. I've been
absolutely.
That's why I've been waiting. I've been waiting. And actually, another cool thing to tack on to this whole discussion with like Galley-la, the Punk Hazard giants, and all that is there was this comment that I had during my stream, and I thought this was the first person I heard it from. I don't know if other people have started talking about this, but so remember how Kuzan showed up at the end of Punk Hazard, and he was already with Blackbeard by that point, and we never really knew what he was doing over there? What if he was there to look for the giants? What if he was there to unfreeze the giants? What if that's why because Kuzan does have ice powers, he joined Blackbeard late in the process. What's Oda cooking there? Why is Oda combining because Blackbeard's a devil fruit guy. They even talked about like how useful Kuzan's could be. Well, what if it's because he's going to go unfreeze the giants? What if that's Kuzan's role, is just because we already saw him freeze a giant and then unfreeze him, right, with the ice time capsule. Now, is he going to be able to like bring them back to life? Like they would still have to be alive. Like he's not, he doesn't have the op-out for, he's not doing some crazy surgeries. But I don't know, man. Like I feel like Kuzan again, I don't know. Like maybe little Oars Jr. gets there. He's like, oh my god, I finally found him. And then Kuzan's like, well, too bad. And then he freezes him. And then maybe we got to melt and save little Oars Jr. And then he tells us what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something like that I could see happening. But what you think? You like the Kuzan idea?
So I was just thinking now too, because obviously, like, let's say in the last 100 years, 50 years or so, give or take how long these guys have been frozen, right? Kuzan's age right now, if I'm not mistaken, he's in his 40s, going on 50s? 49 precisely, right? So, okay, so now that actually makes it even more interesting, too, because if it's 100 years, 50 years, whatever, give or take how long it's been since they've been frozen, what are, like, because if you think about it, you could just stick the guys in, like, a freezing chamber and then they can freeze after. Well, wouldn't it be a lot faster if somebody else had, Kuzan's Devil Fruit to be able to speed up the process? And if they were very intelligent on how to use their fruit, they could use it, but also, like, defuse at the same time. So they could kind of just, they could create this ice chamber, but they also know how to reset the properties back.
So you're saying that maybe a past ice fruit user froze all of them, and so Kuzan will be able to save them because
that's what I would think. So yeah, because if you think about it that way, if it would make sense for why Kuzan was there specifically for that reason, because if you're gonna try and like unthaw someone, because again we saw what happened with Saul, he was frozen, then became unfrozen because obviously went into the water and stuff, and that was probably like the safest bet that they could make without completely like destroying them in the process. But if you're gonna use like, let's say like with fire and stuff, we've seen like with Ace at times where like he was in the fire's kind of like absorbed back into him, so like that's never a problem. I think Sabo's like another better example of that too. Well, if it could do that with fire, I can't see why other properties wouldn't be able to do so, and to be able to return the ice back to where it began with Kuzan being there, I think that will be like a crazy way of doing it. And then these people are like being like, their memories, but they have to be alive. They have to be alive. I would imagine they got to be alive, because like for Oda to go and try and say like, there's a way that we can bring these guys back, because obviously it's people interested in what they could do, and especially if they know how to make the properties there to build Pluton. Well, they're more useful alive than they are dead. And I think that also would save them a problem of, let's say, well, if they're dead, I'm gonna just go and get Moria after to like bring them back or something. But they're already alive. The only way you can control them after is by having someone that is the ruler of Elbaf, in the case of Herald, to be able to use them to their will. Because if they're going to listen to anybody, they're going to listen to the king, the guy that they used to abide by back in the time, right?
With the way that Punk Hazard looks, everyone kind of assumes that Kuzan and Akainu awakened whenever they were fighting on Punk Hazard, right? Mm-hmm. So what if the story is that back in the day, all those giants got frozen because a past user of the ice fruit also awakened on Punk Hazard. So the reason that it was cold originally, even before Kuzan, was again the same thing that Kuzan did. And so now Kuzan's going there to basically reverse it, kind of like you said. I think that is great, because then we'd also be wondering, like, who froze it in the past, or what was the altercation. And so maybe there was like an ice fruit guy. He could have been evil, could have been part of the 20 Kings, because Kuzan did work for the 20 Kings, and now he's working for another shady guy. So the ice fruit is kind of tied to shady people in general. Mm-hmm. Like, not that the person who eats it's that shady, because honestly Kuzan's kind of like a good guy, but he keeps getting roped in with the bad guys. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So maybe, back in the day, it was like the world government sent someone to go freeze them, because and it could even be a thing where, like, because Rock said at this chapter, like, Elbaf's really key to the future, or something to that effect. Like, whoever controls Elbaf is gonna win. Like, Emu says, or Gunko said something like that too. Like,
both sides know, like, the Elbaf is very, very important. Because I mean, going back to even like Whole Cake Island with Big Mom, she has stated that if she had the power of Elbaf in her possession, she would become the Pirate King. So it's like, it's clearly saying that whoever gets hold of this is gonna be one step closer to becoming like the Pirate King, or getting closer to the One Piece, or just in the case being the king of the world.
Maybe back in the day, the government sent someone with the ice fruit to go take on the Galley-la people, because it's like, hey, these guys are really dangerous. But maybe they even told them, like, don't kill them though, because we want to use them, right? Because Elbaf's so important, we want to have these guys on our side later. Just freeze them, and whenever they come back, then we'll coax them back over to our side. So maybe they do come back. I mean, with the way that Oda's building it up, it feels like they have to be alive. Or at least one of them, right?
They serve more of a purpose, I think, being alive than dead. Because even with them alive, you can also find some interesting stories that get told, or maybe there's some things after, like, let's say they're like parts of like Elbaf's history that maybe like the current generation are not too familiar with, and just like, for example, like, what if those Asian giants are aware about that laboratory that Lilith and stuff is at over at the moment, and she's trying to bring back, like, Vegapunk and stuff, and then also trying to revive Kuma. Well, what if they're familiar about certain things? I feel like if you were to like bring them back, let's say this is more for like future stuff or whatever, then maybe they could provide other things that are there. But I do think they serve more of a purpose in the story if they were alive rather than dead, because the dead, there's just a lot of complications of reanimation and actually bringing things back to life. And then obviously that also brings the great fear factor, is that a lot of characters who have died now may have a chance of coming back if they have had a chance of coming back.
Yeah. I feel like Oda might hit like a middle ground where maybe like a lot of the giants did die, but maybe like one will still be alive, so that way they can speak to what happened or something. But I don't know. Either way, man, I am.
But it's also just going to mention too that the thing you also said as well with the whole, like they kind of like froze him over and like trying to keep him aside and everything. It kind of reminds of the parallel in a way with like Egghead as well, because if you remember with Emmett, when they came in and started attacking Marriage World after as well, they could have easily just gotten rid of that thing, but Saturn just said, nah, we'll just hide it away in this little island or whatever and let's just like study about it. Well, it's basically the same thing right now they're doing. So I think like, because obviously they're the essence of evil and stuff, but their curiosity is eventually what led to their demise, especially now in the current time, because instead of getting rid of the things that would probably bring ruin to you, you decided to let it go. So in the same sense of Emmett coming back and doing what they did in Egghead, it's kind of the same sense right now with the giants. Like they probably should have gotten rid of them, like completely erased them, but by doing this whole freezing thing that you brought them back, a chance of having them come back, now it's gonna like bring up more problems for them in the future.
I know, I feel like it's so crazy how many like new plot lines Oda suddenly kind of brought in. Like we heard of the Galley-la for the first time like 2 chapters ago, and now look how many theories we're connecting back to like past things. And also one other thing is you brought up Pluton earlier, and we talked about like maybe they made Pluton and stuff. Well, going back to the kid of it all, he also talked about an ancient battleship, the Ox Lloyd, right? That or Killer did. But I thought that was always interesting, like, of all the people that Oda could have had talk about the Ox Lloyd, which is, like, this other secret ancient warship that we haven't heard of, which, like, it wasn't said to be an ancient weapon, but I feel like it could maybe be, like, adjacent, because, if the battleship was important enough to, like, keep the bell and the government, like, reveres the bell, it's like, that was probably an important ship to them at some point. And so, I don't know if that could also be an angle to it. Like, for example, maybe Galley-la made that as well. So they made Pluton and the Ox Lloyd, and maybe even the Arc Maxim that we saw on the mural. Because that's not the same one that Enel has, because he had his built with gold by the Skypeans. But like, there was an operable one in the past, right? That we saw on the mural in the first world. So it's like maybe the Galley-la giants had something to do with all these different groups. And so, I don't know, going back to Kid, it could be like the person that inspired him maybe knew about it because like his family passed it down. Maybe he was like related to the guy who made it or something like that. I don't know. Oda, it's just like we said. I find it so insane how many connections Oda's like tying back to. Like everything's starting to make sense. All the loose ends are not being too loose anymore.
No, for sure. And I feel like even like Egghead and even like more so now Elbaf is like starting to open up those possibilities of like, questions that we've been asking for such a long time, and now we're getting answers for. Like, it does suck that in some sense, like, it means the story is coming to an end, but I would rather, like, not be, like, held on as, like, too long and waiting on an answer on something. So the fact that we're getting all this now, hey, man, I love it.
Yep. And, there were a couple other cool reveals. Speaking of getting to the end of the story, we also got some more of the Rocks pirates revealed. So we're actually going to start with my guy Barbell. So whenever I saw him, my reaction, I was stunned. I didn't know what I was looking at. I was like, this is one of the craziest designs that I've ever seen. From the Nika hair just him. And then whenever you get down to the bottom panel, he has like the Urouge necklace.
That's
our guy.
I pointed out. Yeah.
And the Ace necklace, but it's also the Urouge necklace. So I was like, this guy, I mean, if you look at chapter 1096, when we saw the Rocks pirates like going to God Valley or whatever, he's there, but he doesn't have the hair. He doesn't have the Nika hair. Like you can see like a fishman off to the side. So I think that's a crazy ad. I don't know if that's like from a devil fruit or what the hell is going on there. But I feel like he's got to be Sunbell's brother, right? Like,
maybe, yeah. I would say that makes
Barbell,
sense.
Sunbell. We've been talking to my Discord that maybe Jinbei is also related because his name is Jinbell. So you got Barbell, which is like, that's kind of like one of those meme theories. I feel like where you're just like, it's just like a funny joke. But I mean, at this point, if Rocks is gonna have Barbell and Roger's gonna have Sunbell, maybe we do need a bell, and maybe it's Jin Bell. I don't know.
Yeah, and also like if you think about it too as well, because like I mean like as for a fisherman and stuff, I don't think Fisher Tiger was around during this period, if I'm not mistaken. Like he was like about to, or he's like a young rookie or something. But it wouldn't be surprising if Barbell was someone that maybe Fisher Tiger took inspiration and learned from, because like it'd just be like an easy way to just like tie some people together here and there.
He was 4 years old at this point, or no, sorry. Fisher Tiger was 48 when he died, so he'd be, when did he die? Like 13 years ago or something, 15 years ago. Let's just say 15. It's around there. It was like a year or two or something after, or maybe like 3 years after he saved the fishmen. So whatever. So he'd be a little over 60 one way or the other. And so if this is 44 years ago, Fisher Tiger would have been ready to go, ready to leave and start doing. So yeah, that could have been his inspiration for sure.
For sure, like they had met or something, and then obviously like kind of like how Jinbei like joined like the side of good essentially, and then obviously we saw with Arlong, he was more on the evil side. Well, with Fisher Tiger, there was good to him. Obviously, he had his prejudice and stuff towards humans, but it was understandable given the context and situation of everything. Whereas like Barbell is probably in the same vein like with Arlong. Like now, granted, we still got to see more of his personality outside of what he saw, because like you said, he had the hair and stuff that was going on with like the Nika type thing. It would be kind of crazy if he was the one that actually had the devil fruit. Because again, like as far as we know, like we don't know how many other people had consumed that devil fruit prior in time, but obviously during the events of God Valley, his hair was completely gone. Now, whether it's he shaved it purposely, whether it's because he didn't activate the fruit, but I think that would be like a crazy twist that he was one of the guys that had it, and it would obviously open up the possibility that it wasn't just like Joy Boy lost the devil fruit, and it wasn't until Luffy got it in his possession, because we knew like from CP9 or with the Cyberpole agents and with Shanks and stuff, the devil fruit was in circulation, so someone had to have consumed it at some point in time. It wasn't just chilling in a treasure chest all the way through like the Void Century till now. And I think that would be a crazy reveal there, like he was the one that actually had possession, and he was a monster in his own right.
Yeah, or the fruit was at least like passing hands, like it wasn't sitting in one place, like. Because I could see a world where like people kept wanting to eat it, but it would just somehow escape their grasp. But yeah, it definitely was moving around, So it's a possibility, and I think it'd be really interesting to see another fishman with a devil fruit like Jack. Like how he was able to breathe at the bottom of the ocean but couldn't move, and at least saved his life kind of to be a fishman in that regard. So I think it'd be cool to see another one. But
he's one of the members, if I'm not mistaken, too. Like he's not confirmed dead or alive. Like obviously, like the types of like Wang Ji, Captain John, we know the situation obviously wouldn't have happened, but he's one of the ones we still don't know. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's a character we were to run into at some point in time afterwards, whether if it's running back to Fishman Island or we go somewhere else where they are. Because I do feel like if you look at where the story is right now, after Elbaf, we have no idea where the story could go into, and I think because the possibility of other members of the Roger Pirates, Rock Pirates are probably like still laying around somewhere out there. I think there's still a chance that we may run into people that who knows, maybe even the Man Marked by Flames might be somebody tied even to one of those groups possibly, and then with the world government as well, right?
Well, that's been a theory I've seen a lot, is that Barbell could be the Man Marked by Flames because he has flames on his head, so that's the flames of it.
Fire.
And he's a fishman, so going back to the whirlpool stuff.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like the Man Marked by Flames, like I feel like Barbell is like too much of like a recent and too much of like a side character personally, where it's like if he's that, because whoever gives Luffy the final poneglyph, there's gotta be like a narrative backing to it, right? It can't just be hey, I'm a really strong pirate and I just wanted to give it to you and here you go. Like there's gotta be a lot more, which is why I like the Mass Deuce idea, because that ties to Whitebeard and Ace and a lot of other people. So there's like a lot of sentimental stuff, even though he is like a random character, kind of like Barbell is. But it's just like until we get more, I'm like, I don't know if he hits the bar yet, but which that was no pun intended.
I was thinking like
but I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll get more on him and it'll happen. I don't know. But a cool idea for his fruit, though, that I heard, and I can't remember who said this. Maybe Kev, I can't remember. But it could be that he has maybe like Vasco Shot's fruit because he lights the sake on fire. And so what if he has just like sake coming out of his head and he just lit it on fire, cool, so he just looks badass? Yeah, I think that would be really cool, because then he could also turn it on and off. Going back to chapter 1096, like it could just be like an intimidation thing, I guess, at that point.
For sure.
But then the other pirate that we met that I really want to talk about is Silver Axe. So we talked about this before the stream too, but hold on one second. Cliff, you gotta get out of here, buddy. Cliff is
he's excited for Kill, man.
You gotta move. I know you love Silver Axe, Cliff. I know, trust me, me too. We talked about it before the stream, but Wang Ji, at least for me, I was expecting a little more out of his design. I mean, I get it now with the Caribou connection or whatever, but I was almost thinking like a Silver Axe-esque design where this is such a cool design for me, from the tattoos to grabbing this dude by his head to the glasses with the X on it to the X on the chin, which makes me think of X Drake, by the way.
Yeah, I was about to say,
And why don't we just start there? What's your immediate family peace vibe here? Because it feels like that's what Oda's doing, is a lot of these guys are family peace leaders, you know what I mean? Like there's somebody related to them somewhere in the world right now. And he has the X on his chin, which is not something that would normally be hereditary, so like the X Drake thing, I'm like, that wouldn't be something he passes down, but that would still be like a foreshadow or a parallel from Oda, right? Because also Diaz Barrels didn't have an X on his chin, he just had like a butt chin kind of thing. He looked like the Crimson Chin a little bit. Yeah. Maybe not really. Maybe Clef the Boy Chin Wonder. But so he's a little bit different. But I still think that. And then also, I don't know really what it is, but I got a Don Krieg vibe right when I looked at him.
Yeah, I've been seeing that too as well. Like, I think the most ideal one I would say is maybe with Drake, because again, it could be like his grandfather for all we know. Right. I've also saw some people saying maybe there's going to be a connection to Smoker. Because when you look at the facial structure and the hair and stuff, whatever, like, because you can think about it with Smoker, like, obviously, like, the furthest we knew about his past was that he met Gold Roger when he was pulling up in Logtown and everything. But, like, the background that he had kind of seemed like somebody that was more on, like, I wouldn't say on the poorer side, but he wasn't living rich either. So it kind of would make sense that, like, if he was, like, tied to, like, a family of, let's say, mobsters, and they were kind of just doing their own thing just to be able to make ends meet and stuff, because it's assuming that he's still around at this point in time, Silver Axe. Right?
I think so.
Which also makes the sense that maybe Shiki potentially might be around, and we might actually get to see him in the present time, but that depends on whatever Oda wants to do or not. But if he was tied to like someone like Smoker or something, I think that would also be like really cool as well, because you would have it to where, let's say your family side is like into the gambling, crime rate and stuff, whatever, and such there, and then he's somebody that pursued justice instead because he wasn't vibing whatsoever with the lifestyle that his family had lived in at some point in time. So, Silver Axe, I think if you were to do that and he was like someone related to like Smoker, it would be interesting because of the parallels of like one decided to go into all the crime, mobster stuff versus somebody after that, went into being a Marine. But with the Diaz Drake one, I think that also would be like a cool thing for like his grandfather or some kind of sorts, because like the build, like just the X mark again, I feel like there has to be reasons for that specifically. Yeah. Just don't throw stuff like that in there for any reason. But what I'm more curious though, and I know we're going to talk about, is the whole thing with him and Shiki, because in this translation here, they go with Kyo the Wicked. Obviously, his thing is the mobster Kyo, and they're said to be a rival to Shiki. Now, right. I think this is almost a given. Like, if we see the God Valley incident, I don't even care if it's a tiny clash. I don't care if it's one sword versus one sword. I need to see the two of them go down. Like, I need to see the battle between gold and silver, man. Like, I think that's something that would be really cool to see. And like, he looks like somebody that probably was one of their top guys outside of the obvious people that we know that's on there. Because for him to do what he was doing there, just like squashing somebody's head like a grape, I mean, they just... Hey man, they were just that guy at that time. And then obviously if he was somebody that was that crazy, imagine what Shiki was like outside of the stuff that we know from Strong World and what we have heard from the past and everything, right? So yeah, he's definitely a character I'm very, very interested to see if we're going to learn more about. I mean, I'm trying to think too, because when he came out with the cape and we didn't see the design and stuff too, I don't know if there's maybe a possibility out there somewhere that maybe he could also be a candidate for the man marked by flames. So I don't know. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see like where he comes back into things. But I do think he's somebody we're probably going to see a lot more of maybe after Elbaf, since obviously everything's up for grabs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I because like he wasn't one of the zombies from Thriller Bark, and I feel like that's kind of the ultimate sign of like, are they dead or not? Like that was like Oda's early foreshadowing to kind of tell us. So I would like to see him, especially because Shiki's still alive, and so it would kind of make sense if Oda's going to weave their plot lines together through some way. But like you said, they have the same epithet. Like TCB says the Wicked, Viz says Mobster. I think I saw another one that was actually a different thing, but they're all. It is the same kanji. It's just referring. The third one was like Yakuza or something like that.
Right, the Yakuza.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, but they're all just referring to the same. It's like it's the same kanji for both of them. So whatever the name is, it is the same for Shiki and Silver Axe, and since Silver Axe, well. He wasn't called Silver Axe yet, but he eventually became Silver Axe, and Shiki was Golden Lion. It feels like that's kind of a Roger Pirates thing, right? Where gold, silver, copper, or whatever. So I don't know if that means maybe they were on the same crew originally, and then maybe like they were on the same crew, or even if it's not the same pirate crew, the same mob group or whatever, and then maybe Rocks came in, hey, we're going to do a Davy Back fight. I want to get Shiki. And then he won and took Shiki. And then now Silver Axe, maybe like a few years later, maybe the group disbanded or lost. And if he is connected to Don Krieg, that would be a cool parallel because Don Krieg got his ass kicked in the Grand Line and came back, right? That's why he was in the East Blue. And so it could be the same thing where he's like, hey, well, my crew lost. I don't have the leader. Or even if Shiki wasn't the leader of the group, it could be that they were just both in the same group in general, and that's why, and their names became what they are because Shiki, like, even if at the time he wasn't the leader, that's just what Oda's telling us is like Shiki is a little bit better, but they are kind of the same. They are contemporaries, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I think that'd be cool because we know that, Rocks was doing Davy Back fights, so Shiki just got taken from Silver Axe's group basically, and now he's just coming back like, all right, y'all are doing bigger stuff than what I was doing. Let me join. So I think that'd be cool.
I'm curious though, like how they're gonna try and how they're gonna try and differentiate, like, because obviously Don Marlin was a gangster from the West Blue, and obviously like Shiki and Silver Axe were more so like mobsters. So I'm curious to see like if they have some kind of connection to each other at some point in time, because like to differentiate a mobster and a gangster, I don't see. Like, you're still in the same, like, line of work, I would assume. So, like, maybe there's a chance that Marlin maybe knows some stuff about the two of them. And who knows? Because, like, how you go by the gold, silver, and then, who was the copper? Who was, like, the bronze, essentially? Well, maybe it was him or someone that they knew of or something. Because I do feel like, as much as he's been important, like, to what we're talking about right now, I feel like Don Marlin's someone that we're going to see a little bit more of in terms of, like little things here and there that's going to make sense of stuff. Because I know some people also think that he may be Capone's dad. I actually would prefer much more like if he was either like an uncle or maybe like a rival of the 5 families that eventually he took over after at some point. So
yeah, he's definitely going to be connected to Beige. It doesn't have to be that he's his dad though, but definitely like, obviously Oda wants us to tie back to those crime families, but it is interesting. I feel like what Oda's going to try doing is like Capone's group is going to be like your probably more prototypical mob, at least for us in the West, that we're used to, like in a lot of movies. But then maybe Shiki's is going to be like a more Yakuza specific, like he's going to, because like if you look at the way that Shiki and Silver Axe are dressed, it feels like a Wano-esque theming, right? Yeah, they have like these robes on. And so I feel like he's going to really try making it, like Italian mob, Japanese mob, or kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like he's going to really go to like different kind of things. And I don't know if there even are other ones, but you would have to imagine that back in the like whenever, I guess in this era of One Piece, like there weren't as many well-established groups, because like once Roger had he started the Great Age of Pirates, then you had a lot of pirate groups out there. But I feel like before that happened, you might have had more like crime rings, like more typical mob groups instead of pirate groups, right? And so it would make sense that that's kind of what Rocks was poaching from. Like, oh, let me go to this crime ring, get the top guy. Let me go into this mob group, right? So I think that's what Oda's going to do is we're just going to see different types of mobs. Some, modeled after Italian mob, more Yakuza style, more. Again, I'm not well versed in this stuff, but I feel like there's been enough crime rings throughout history for Oda to pull from, you know what I mean? So yeah, I guess that's kind of what he's going for.
What's interesting too is like going back to the thing with the Marlin and the stuff. If you remember, like the pre-time skip, right before we get into the time skip, where they're showing the supernovas and where they were and stuff at times, and Capone got picked up by a certain rock with a bunch of stuff, whatever, that was like sucked up, and a lot of people assumed that possibly that may involve Shiki because with Strong World and just like connection from that. Well, if there was a connection between Marlin and Shiki, let's say because they had the fight, whatever happened during God Valley, and let's say for example Marlin's connected to Capone, whether it be a family member or whatever it is. Well, that would be actually an interesting way to tie back in the present time that Shiki at one point was after Capone because of something that happened back in the day with like Marlin. And if you couldn't get to Marlin, well, the next person you go after is someone that's connected in the same line of work, and that person, of course, being Capone. So I felt like, as much as I'm ready to see that fight between Shiki and Kyo in God Valley, I wouldn't be surprised if Shiki like throws his blade towards somebody else, and that person being Marlin.
Yeah, I actually really like that. It's you think back to the end of the time skip when Beige got sucked up into that flying ship, and I feel like a lot of theories are that's Shiki related because Shiki can make other things float or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so maybe that's like that's where all of it weaved together is like Shiki came and picked up Capone there and talked to him, like trying to work with him for whatever, and maybe that's why Beige joined Big Mom, right, to go infiltrate to get some knowledge or whatever because he's working with Shiki on the back end, which I think makes a lot of sense actually. Yeah, and honestly, the fact that he's called Mobster, it's like they would be cut from the same cloth, right?
They have to be, yeah. There's just no way that they're anything different from each other. Okay, like maybe like from the gangster standpoint, like we know how the West Blue is kind of operating. And not to mention the fact that all the God Valley incident took place in the West Blue. So if there's and like who do we know that's all connected now? There like there's a lot of characters that are connected to the West Blue. It's like it feels like there's definitely a little bit more to that, and then obviously it'll be a great way to bring Shiki back into the story. To have some kind of involvement, because I feel like if he does come back into the story, you also have another big name that comes back that is from the same time as like the Kaidos, Big Moms, that kind of like almost replaces them, but also has like a point to prove because of how much like the One Piece world has kind of like developed and grown, and a lot of like the Four Emperors, for example, have now completely changed. There's new power that's up there. Can Shiki still rival some of these guys? Is he still going to be a force to be reckoned with? If the Marines were here at the Golden Line was back out there causing mayhem, what do we do after? Because we already got our own problems. That's one thing they don't want to have. And if Strong World's an indicator of what he's capable of, but in actual Oda writing in the main timeline, I don't know. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see what happens if he was to come back into the main timeline.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. I think Shiki's bound to come back, and it really makes me think that Oda maybe has been keeping Shiki at bay because it's not just him, but all the living Roger pirates are going to come back and have at least the ones that, like, because we already fought Big Mom and Kaido, but honestly, I think they both have a stake in Elbaf at this point, with obviously Big Mom and Mother Carmel, and then, as we've talked about before, if Kaido is really related to Harold, Oda might just weave all of this in one major storyline, like, because Harold's also tied to Rocks now, so it would kind of make sense that Elbaf is really the Rocks arc in a certain way. So I don't know. We got a lot of we have a lot to look forward to, is what I tried to say. We do. We have so much to look forward to. So yeah, I think we've gotten through pretty much everything. So Laz, you got anything to tell the people? Any parting words where they can find you?
Well, we do talk about the chapters every single week, whether it comes out on the Thursdays or whatever. But at Commodore Laz, in the words of Shaquille O'Neal, you say Google me, Chuck, but it's very easy to do on YouTube as well when you do Commodore Laz. But yeah, we talk about the One Piece manga as well as the anime on the Sundays, and then of course if you enjoy Dotadon, I also talk about the manga when it comes out on the Mondays, and then the Thursdays with the anime as well. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check me out. And the recent chapters have been absolutely mad, so yeah, you definitely want to be a part of the weekly experience for that one there. So that's where you can find me. Yeah, for sure. Go check out Laz. He's been cooking lately. I know you've had some reactions, do some pretty solid numbers over there. So definitely go check him out. I'll put a link down below, of course. But Laz, thank you, brother. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon, because Oda's cooking too hard. So you'll be back. But thank you all for watching. Appreciate you, and we will be back next week. Have a good one.